Hello, everybody. Happy Monday to you, or whatever day it is that you are listening to this. Hello to everybody who is a returning viewer. If you are a new viewer, it is nice to meet you guys. Welcome into the 1212 podcast. I am your host, Trent. A huge weekend when it came to the NFL. It was divisional weekend. We can hop right into it. The game that I was hyped for, the one game where I was really rooting for the underdog, the Cleveland Browns and the Kansas City Chiefs. I almost said Cincinnati. I'm so used to Cleveland, Cincinnati, talking about them at the bottom of the barrel that I nearly said the Cincinnati Chiefs. The Kansas City Chiefs defeated the Cleveland Browns this weekend in what was, all I can say, a sloppy game. A lot of the injuries from the game are actually headlining afterwards. Not exactly the performance of either of the teams. So, to start off, what I really want to say in regards to this game, I want to focus on the winners first, and we'll get back to the Browns in a second. There is some reason for concern. Never mind the fact that Patrick Mahomes, got injured. The Kansas City Chiefs, a majority of their wins this season, including, I believe they'd be at 8 or 9 consecutive at this point, have been by less than a possession, or a possession or fewer. This team is not blowing other teams out. In most cases, a lot of the teams that they are beating have had a shot to beat them down the stretch and haven't done it, Cleveland being the most recent of them. Their field goal struggles I'll attribute to the stadium, but they better hope for good weather if they're going to keep kicking like that. You can't be handing better teams opportunities, and it seems like the Kansas City Chiefs definitely have been handing people a lot of free opportunities, albeit, they haven't had to pay for it. They're 14-2, now 15-2. They're on their way to their third consecutive AFC Championship game, but I can say this much. Whether it is Patrick Mahomes or Chad Henne taking snaps, which obviously nobody's going to pretend, it's Patrick Mahomes who gives you the best chance of winning. If he's available, he is going to play. Of course, he's subject to concussion protocol. There's no guarantee that we get Patrick Mahomes. I'm sure he's going to do everything in his power to be on that field. But whether it's him or it's Chad Henne, you can't keep getting bailed out at the fact that the opposing offense is not up to snuff and not going to take advantage of opportunities when they get them. Baker Mayfield, as much as I love the guy, had a chance to really cement himself in the history books and had a chance to put his team on top and possibly win the game 24-22 and allow Cleveland to move on. Now, I'm one of the people who thinks that Baker Mayfield gets a very bad rap. Baker Mayfield is a great quarterback. He's a franchise quarterback. There are, if you think that it's time for Cleveland to move on, there are numerous teams in the NFL who would take Baker Mayfield today over who they currently have. The Browns have a very good foundation in place to be successful, but this year it was just a bit too soon, it seems. They have a lot of work to do on the defensive end of the ball. They have plenty of room when it comes to cap. They have a very good now front office who can hopefully take advantage of the picks that they're going to have and develop this defense and develop this team to going from a playoff contender to a Super Bowl contender. It's going to be really great to see. But with the Kansas City Chiefs, they play the Buffalo Bills this weekend. And let me tell you, if you are going to miss a field goal against Josh Allen and Stephon Diggs, they are going to make you pay for it. You're not going to get away with it the same way that you got away with it against Baker Mayfield and Jarvis Landry. And that's not to take away any credit from Kareem Hunt or Nick Chubb, who both had very good games. The Browns had a good game overall, But having a good game overall is not enough to beat a team that's better than you. And in this case, Kansas City was, and it's not a shock to anybody, Kansas City was the better team. But if you are a points kind of person, then it was a very happy day for you if you picked Cleveland to cover the spread, because they did. There's a lot of positivity to be had in the Cleveland camp right now. It doesn't seem like a lot of their coaching staff will be moving out. Kevin Stefanski has a great grip on that offense. I think the big storyline for the Browns over the offseason, other than how they're going to build up their defense, is definitely going to be what they do with wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. It definitely seemed like when Odell went down, the Browns improved quite a bit on offense, actually. So you have to wonder if the addition of Odell on the Browns' offensive side is actually taking a toll on their production as opposed to enhancing it. Is Baker Mayfield under a bit more pressure when he has Odell Beckham on the field? Does he feel like he has to force it to Odell Beckham Jr. when he has all of these weapons, like a Jarvis Landry, like a David Njoku, like Nick Chubb, like Kareem Hunt? Jonathan Peoples-Jones emerged this year as a great option for Cleveland. And it's going to be really interesting to see, because at this point, it seems as though the Pittsburgh Steelers are definitely going to start. I don't want to say that they're going to go in full rebuild, but they're definitely going to reload. There's a lot of questions for them at the quarterback position. The Bengals, it's very unknown whether or not they'll take advantage of Joe Burrow. We've seen the Bengals squander talent at the quarterback position for years and years and years, whether that be Carson Palmer or even a guy like Andy Dalton. I don't have a lot of I have faith in Joe Burrow to perform. I don't have a lot of faith in the Cincinnati Bengals as an organization. So now that you have some organizational stability within the Browns and you've tasted the playoffs, the Browns fan base now, I believe more than any, is going to be very, very hostile. And they're going to start expecting wins as opposed to accepting wins. That kind of thing happens when you go from bottom of the barrel to a contender. This is a legitimately contending team, and I think we're going to be talking about them for a couple years down the road. But for this weekend, it wasn't enough. The Kansas City Chiefs continue and I don't want to say a reign of dominance, but they have won so many games consecutively. But a majority of these games are by a possession or less. So that's very concerning when you're going up against a very powerful offense in the Buffalo Bills, which we can get into that game right now. The Buffalo Bills defeated the Baltimore Ravens 17-3 this weekend in what was a defensive struggle for the most part. Josh Allen once again played amazing. I don't think there's any question at this point that the Bills have, and Sean McDermott in particular, the head coach, but the Bills have a winning culture around them. So to be able to see the Bills build themselves the way they did is honestly incredible. They absolutely nailed the Josh Allen pick in a draft full of quarterbacks. Keep in mind, we're one pick away from the Bills possibly have drafted Josh Rosen instead of Josh Allen, which I think would be we'd be in a very different position here if Josh Rosen, my boy Josh Rosen, I love Josh Rosen, but if Josh Rosen had gone to the Bills, I don't think we're talking about the Bills in the same manner we are now. Josh Allen is a leader. Josh Allen has a great arm. He's physically gifted in every possible way. It is going to be awesome, absolutely awesome, to see what Josh Allen can do in his first AFC Championship game. The Bills have a chance to move on to the Super Bowl for the first time since, I believe, 1993. It's going to be wild. It's going to be a great game. It's going to be at Arrowhead. You know it's going to be loud. Josh Allen has such a tall task in front of him. And if he can do that and lead his team to a Super Bowl, I don't know if this is a Super Bowl team, but it's definitely a team that would scare me if you're in the NFC. So one of the prevailing stories out of this game was the injury to Lamar Jackson. Lamar Jackson went down nearing the end of the game. At this point, the game was pretty out of reach. Had a very impromptu throw where he wound up landing on the back of his head. Very ugly. Very, very ugly. And just like Patrick Mahomes in the other game, he's in concussion protocol. His season is over. But even then, within the concussion protocol, they knew they weren't getting their quarterback back. Their backup did step up. But I think one of the great stories out of this is actually the fact that Bills Mafia donated over $250,000 to Lamar Jackson's charity campaign after he got hurt. This is the kind of this is the fan base that you want in the NFL. You don't, I will say, the Bills are incredibly well known for having a very rowdy fan base. They're very impassioned, full of fire. They break through plastic tables before games. But just like when Andy Dalton knocked the Ravens out of the playoffs to get the Bills in, this is a fan base that has a lot of outreach, or outreach is at the very least important to them. So to be able to see them, rally behind an opponent who got injured and donate that much money to a good cause, it's just something great to see. And I love seeing that from a fan base like the Bills, as opposed to a fan base like the Eagles, where they're very spiteful, very hateful, known for not being a great fan base. Bills Mafia, it's right up there. It's a great fan base. They definitely, for all the years of futility and 4 years straight losing a Super Bowl, everything good that is happening to them at this moment, I will say, is well-deserved. Very well-deserved. It's great that the Bills are moving on. I was hoping that the Bills would win. If you can't tell, I'm a big Josh Allen fan. I think Josh Allen is going to be great for years and years and years. This was an awesome game to see, and the championship this weekend is going to be even better. Moving along over to the NFC, we had the Saturday afternoon game, the game that I had my eyes glued on the most. The Green Bay Packers defeated the LA Rams. The Green Bay Packers, who, mind you, I have heard from many, many people, cannot beat good teams. Well, they beat a very good team in their own right in the LA Rams. And the final score was 32-18. This game, while the Rams were able to pull within a score, it never felt close. This is the kind of game, as, again, I disclose, as a Packer fan, I was very much hoping for. And I'm very glad that I got it. Every aspect of the Packers' offense looks incredible. They're averaging more than 4 yards a carry. Aaron Rodgers is as accurate as he's ever been. Throwing dimes, an absolute dime to end the game on his last throw to Allen Lazard, which closed it. But I want to talk about a couple of players here. One of the things that I said before this game happened was that one of the prevailing storylines may have been the performance of Jared Goff, and that I was rooting for Jared Goff because, to me, Jared Goff is a certified tough guy. The dude popped his thumb back into place on live TV. I figured, being 18 days removed from a thumb surgery, there was no way he was going to be able to get the ball down the field effectively, which would have allowed Green Bay to really just pin their ears back and sell out to the run. Thankfully, for Jared Goff, it didn't seem to affect him too much. Obviously, he wasn't at 100%. But Jared Goff, when it came his time to bear the load, he definitely did that. Jared Goff played very well despite being injured. And you got to give credit to the guy. Now the question remains, how sold on Jared Goff is Sean McVay? Are you ready to carry this team farther and farther, knowing that you're invested in this quarterback? Jared Goff, not in terms of leadership by any means, but in terms of maybe mentality and skill set, Jared Goff is starting to remind me a lot of Jay Cutler, where he definitely has all of the talent to push a team to a Super Bowl. He can elevate a team enough to get them to the Super Bowl. But the question is, does he want to? Does he have the motivation to do that? I'm sure Jared Goff is very aware that he is a good quarterback. But can Jared Goff become a great quarterback next season? He's already been to a Super Bowl. We know he can get there. The question is, can he get there again? They have the personnel. They have the talent. And I think next season, without as many outside factors, the Rams will still be a very scary team. The Rams are not going anywhere. And really, it's a testament to the Rams culture as a whole. The fact that Aaron Donald and Jared Goff even played in this game is incredible. It shows what Sean McVay really has been building there. So, going to one of those other names, Aaron Donald. Aaron Donald had a rib injury that against Seattle looked absolutely severe. It did not look good. I was more than convinced that the guy was not going to play. When you have rib injuries, especially broken ribs, those are incredibly hard to play with. Look up any NFL player talking about injuring their ribs and how hard it makes it to play. It's unreal that Aaron Donald was able to play, but at the end of the day, Aaron Donald was more a liability to the Rams than anything else. It was clear that Matt LaFleur schemed to target Aaron Donald, knowing that he was hurt. During the post-game press conferences, Aaron Rodgers said that there weren't any plays specifically designed for Aaron Donald, but it was very clear what part of the field they were attacking in the run game. And if anything else, what Aaron Donald did was provide a showcase on national television for who I think is probably going to go down as one of the greatest offensive linemen of all time, Elgton Jenkins. That's a very, very bold statement to make, especially considering the guy's a rookie. But if you are a fan of football, if you love the game of football, and if you love watching, like if you've played line before, or if you're somebody young and you're playing line right now, watch film of Elgton Jenkins. This guy can play any position. He's just as versatile in any position they plug him in as he is at his main guard spot. This guy can match up with anybody. This guy can win against anybody on any given Sunday. This guy, along with Bakhtiari and along with Lindsley, make up what I believe is the best offensive line in the NFL. Aaron Rodgers was playing without his starting left tackle. They had Billy Turner starting at left tackle. Aaron Rodgers did not get sacked once. Aaron Rodgers was comfortable in the pocket all day against a pass rush that is very good. This was the number. I want people just to soak this in for a second. This was not just a wild card team that the Packers beat and beat handily. This was the number one defense in the league. I believe they were ranked first in passing. And the Packers absolutely dominated them. One of the plays that was very indicative of the defensive effort by the Rams was the touchdown to Davante Adams, the first touchdown of the game for the Packers, where they sent Davante in motion to the left side. And Davante was able to read, and as well as Aaron Rodgers definitely picked up on this, Jalen Ramsey was tailing him. So Jalen Ramsey had one-on-one. Adams quickly motioned back to the other side. Jalen Ramsey attempted to hand off the coverage to his safety, who had only played just a little over 200 snaps this year. and it was a missed assignment. So if you guys are thinking that Jalen Ramsey was irate on the sideline or in the end zone simply because he got beat, that's not the case, though I wouldn't expect any less from Jalen Ramsey. The big thing that came out of this was it was a missed assignment. Jalen Ramsey was supposed to be covering MVS on that play, and the safety was supposed to be handed off the coverage. Miscommunication between the two. It left Devontae wide open. The only way that was going to be stopped is if Jalen Ramsey knew the route and jumped it for a pick six. It wasn't going to happen. It was a very safe throw. It was an absolute dart by Aaron Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers played and continues to play incredible. So the Packers will move on to play against the winner of the other team, well, the other game that was played on Sunday, in which the Tampa Bay Buccaneers defeated the New Orleans Saints 30-20. This was a very sad game to watch. And it's simply because of Drew Brees. One thing that prevails in sports, and I've said this a couple times now on this podcast, is Father Time. Father Time catches up to everybody. It sucks. I watched it happen with Brett Favre, though he tried to fight off Father Time longer than anybody I know. But it happened to Brett Favre. Even though he won a Super Bowl, it happened to Peyton Manning. It happened to... What this playoff loss reminds me of was the playoff loss in Dan Marino's final game, where you have two legends in their own right. These two are great quarterbacks, surefire Hall of Fame quarterbacks. Incredibly talented. Both can make arguments that they could be the best of all time. But even then, your legacy and your greatness isn't enough to carry you to a win in the NFL. And what's unfortunate, in the same vein that Aaron Donald was a liability to the LA Rams this weekend, unfortunately, Drew Brees seemed to be the biggest liability for the Saints on Sunday. It's very, very, and I don't like saying that. I don't get any pleasure out of saying that Drew Brees cost his team a win. But in this case, it's very hard to argue the opposite. A touchdown to 3 interceptions. 2 of those interceptions were in Saints territory, which allowed very short field, which a guy like Tom Brady, whether he's 22 or 44, the guy is going to take advantage of that. And he did. The Buccaneers were able to take advantage of the Saints' mistakes. They played a very sloppy game, whether it was Drew Brees' interceptions, the fumble by Jared Cook. The simple fact is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, while they may not be the better team, played a better game. And, it kind of doesn't make sense. They were the better team that day. They played a better game that day. And they earned the right to move on. It's very telling that the longest play from scrimmage was thrown by Jameis Winston. Jameis Winston is a very odd case. It's very clear that Taysom Hill is... I'm sorry to Packer fans who, for some reason, are still obsessed with him. Taysom Hill is not Sean Payton's plan in New Orleans. Jameis Winston is the heir to Drew Brees' throne. It is going to come down to Drew Brees. It'll come down to Jameis Winston when Drew Brees is gone, which is very likely now. He's very likely done. Would I be surprised if we see Drew Brees for one more year, especially with the talent that they have on that roster? No. But I think legacy means a lot to Drew Brees. And Drew Brees, I think, is going to be more than content with retiring from the NFL, moving into a broadcaster role. He's ready. It's very clear at the start of this season that he was ready to move on. And now the keys to the New Orleans Saints offense will likely rest in the hands of Jameis Winston unless there's a massive move this offseason, which I honestly don't see them bringing in any veteran quarterbacks. You don't need an old vet to put the pieces together. If you can get a roster this talented behind a young guy as talented, because there's not one person on the planet who will question the talent, the outright talent that Jameis Winston has. The question is now, with 2 years under Sean Payton, has he been able to fix his god-awful decision-making that plagued him so much in Tampa Bay? Remember, Tampa Bay, and this is unfortunate for Jameis Winston right now, Tampa Bay moved on from Jameis Winston to get Tom Brady. Jameis Winston was able to throw the longest play from scrimmage, and think about that. That was the longest play from scrimmage in the whole game. Jameis Winston was able to throw that against his former team to show them, yes, I'm still here. Yes, I'm in your division. Yes, you will have to deal with me. Because, unfortunately, for other teams in the NFC South, I very much still think that the Saints can control the division. I think they are, without a doubt, right now the most talented team in that division. So what's unfortunate for a lot of these teams, which are going to have older quarterbacks, not counting Carolina, which Matt Rule definitely has a good thing going in Carolina. Watch out for them this next season, depending on who their signal caller is. But if you get a guy who can throw a deep ball like Jameis Winston, the NFC South needs to watch out. If he has developed under Sean Payton's system, this is going to be a very, very explosive offseason for the Saints, and the 2021 season might hold even better fortunes for them. One can only imagine. But Tom Brady, as I had mentioned before in a previous podcast, there is no decline of Tom Brady. When you have somebody who has been there that many times, and you give him the opportunities that the Saints gave him, he is going to have a hell of a game. And he did have a pretty decent game. But it was very clear that, yes, we were watching 40-year-old quarterbacks. The ball was not moving downfield. These guys were not throwing that far downfield. They were taking a few deep shots, but the few that they were taking were oftentimes jump balls up for grabs. So you got to wonder now, moving on, if Tom Brady can make some of these big, if Tom Brady can make some of these big explosive plays downfield against Green Bay, because you're not going to be able to do a dink and dunk offense to respond to Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense. On top of that, the Packers defense has not allowed a team in their last 6 games to score more than 20 points. This is going to be a true test of what Green Bay can do and a true test of the real ceiling of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. The last time these two teams played, I would say Green Bay played their worst game of the season, while the Buccaneers played their best game of the season. You had the Packers playing at their floor, almost their basement, I would say. It was lower than their floor. The Packers playing at their floor, while you had the Buccaneers playing at their ceiling, at their best. They had their absolute best game against Aaron Rodgers and the Packers offense. You've got to wonder if that's going to happen again. I'm very excited to see. I don't think it's going to go the same way, but we will talk about that more in my next podcast. Keep you guys just a little bit hooked there. We'll talk about it later. I just want a little bit more time. I want to watch a little bit more film and tell you really how I think that game is going to go. It's going to be, what I do know is it's going to be fun. It's going to be competitive. The storyline, GOAT versus GOAT, awesome. There is nothing I've wanted to see more than Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in the playoffs. I've seen Aaron Rodgers and Tom Brady in a game that pretty much determined the MVP in 2014. That was the last game that Aaron Rodgers played Tom Brady at home. They were able to handle business, and they won. This team for the Packers is even better than their 2014 team. So, and it's a very different team, too. It's not fair to compare season by season, but there's a lot to be liked about this Green Bay team against this Tampa Bay team. But at the same time, Tampa Bay is very much a team that if they can get out to a lead, are very well built to beat Green Bay. But this is going to be a cold game. This is going to be a snowy game. It is going to be great. It's going to be exactly what you want out of Championship Sunday in the NFL. It will be awesome. So moving subjects a little bit, I wanted to take time to talk about the new hires around the league. There were two that I was able to do enough research on. I'll be able to get to the other new hires later on. But the two I wanted to talk about, first off, this is a shout out to my buddy Lucas, huge Jacksonville Jaguars fan. Yes, they exist. Yes, there are Jaguars fans out there. The Jacksonville Jaguars hired former Ohio State Buckeyes head coach Urban Meyer to be their head coach. Now, this, to me, and I'm going to look at it from both perspectives, this is a great move if you are Urban Meyer, and this is a great move if you are Shad Khan. I'm looking at this strictly from, first, if I'm looking at it from Shad Khan's perspective, the owner of the Jacksonville Jaguars, if I'm looking at it from his perspective, this is a no-brainer move. It's a great move for your organization. When at any point outside of 1 year when they were Saxonville, have the Jaguars had any kind of identity whatsoever? Not since the days of Mark Brunell have they ever really contended for anything. But on top of that, if I asked you, describe the Jacksonville Jaguars, would you be able to tell me anything other than Gardner Minshew has a mustache and they play really bad? Unless you are, without a doubt, a Jacksonville Jaguars fan, I don't think you can tell me anything about this team over the last decade because they didn't have an identity. Having Urban Meyer, along with who is most likely going to be Trevor Lawrence, I don't see any reason why you wouldn't draft Trevor Lawrence. But Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville is just exciting. You have, the national championship winner, a Southern guy, Trevor Lawrence, out of a Southern school, Clemson, heading to a Southern team in Jacksonville, playing in warm weather, where you can have an explosive offense. And who else do you bring in but one of the greatest college coaches of all time, Urban Meyer? I cannot think of a better pairing for a rookie head coach and a rookie quarterback than Urban Meyer and Trevor Lawrence. It's going to be interesting to see how this first season goes. But for Urban Meyer, this is also a no-brainer decision. What does Urban Meyer have to lose when it comes to taking this job? Let me tell you, how many people remember Nick Saban in the NFL? Yes, he failed. Yes, he didn't translate well to the NFL. But how many people remember that? How many people remember how bad Nick Saban was when he was the coach of the Miami Dolphins? Nobody does. Right now, the legacy of Nick Saban isn't failed NFL coach. The legacy of Nick Saban continues to be one of, if not the best, college head coaches of all time. Whether or not Urban Meyer does well with Trevor Lawrence in Jacksonville does not change the value of his legacy as the Ohio State Buckeyes head coach. It will never change. There is no risk and all reward for Urban Meyer for taking this job with Jacksonville. Jacksonville cannot get any worse than where it is right now. There is nothing that Trevor Lawrence and Urban Meyer can do to make this team worse unless they go 0-16. Unless Trevor Lawrence is somehow this huge, monumental bust that everybody whiffed on. Does it happen? Yes. Is it likely to happen? I don't think so. Not one bit at all. So Urban Meyer to the Jacksonville Jaguars, at least in my opinion, is a great, great move. You should, I expect improvement. I don't know how much improvement. It all depends on how much scouting the Jacksonville Jaguars have done themselves. How much faith do they have in the core that they had last year? Obviously, we'll see a lot of moves for them to improve that team, to give Trevor Lawrence a good supporting cast. But if Trevor Lawrence winds up being a franchise quarterback, especially with Deshaun Watson likely leaving the Houston Texans, that the AFC South will have a lot to look out for. Because right now there are a lot more questions than answers when it comes to the Colts quarterback situation. Ryan Tannehill is not going to last forever in Tennessee, but he's a solid option. But how long is a solid option going to be enough? And as I said before, the Texans appear to be an absolute disaster. So a lot of things are looking really bright right now. And if you're looking at that perspective as Urban Meyer, why would you not take this job? If you're Shad Khan, why would you not hire a name like Urban Meyer when you're getting a name like Trevor Lawrence? The important part of this hire, well, part of it is obviously you want production on the field. On-field production is what really brings fans to the seats. But to have even that monicum of an identity, that your head coach is Urban Meyer and your starting quarterback is this, I would say, probably the most popular prospect since Andrew Luck. As a Jags fan, what do you not have to be excited for the 2021 season? Other than an inevitable losing record. Which, again, if there's any trend this year when it comes to new quarterbacks, we're moving into an NFL where rookie quarterbacks are a lot more ready to start in a lot of these offensive systems. Obviously, you still have a lot of quarterbacks who are sitting and developing, like a Jordan Love from last year's draft class. But are these prospects going to be ready to go? Are we going to see the same rookie rust that we saw before? Because even in a season without a preseason, it was very clear to see that a lot of these quarterbacks, Joe Burrow and Justin Herbert, for example, they were ready to go right away. And it was awesome to see. On the other side of things, you have the woeful, awful, terrible, void of merit New York Jets. The Jets hired San Francisco defensive coordinator Robert Saleh. Now, in terms of talking about the move, I think one of the coolest things, before talking about anything football, one of the coolest things about this hire, Robert Saleh has become the first Muslim head coach in the NFL. It's very long overdue. It's amazing. It's a great hire all around, I think, for the New York Jets. Completely ignoring his identity with Islam. It's awesome that diversity is beginning to make its way into the NFL. Very, very late, but it's making its way in. And Robert Saleh, let me just emphasize the fact that Robert Saleh's hire is not a hire for publicity. They didn't hire him because he's the first Muslim head coach. They're in New York. So if you think that has anything to do with the hire, you're absolutely stupid. They're not doing this for social clout. They're doing this for a better football team. And one thing that is very clear is Robert Saleh knows how to get the most out of his players, no matter the situation that they're in. Look at the way that despite being ravaged by injuries, despite being eliminated from the playoffs, they played for nothing all year. Look at how that San Francisco defense played every single game. Especially look at the fact that Robert Saleh was able to rally his defense to shut down Kyler Murray in a game that could have given the Cardinals a guaranteed spot in this year's playoffs. Despite the fact that they played for nothing, the 49ers were still able to beat them, thanks in large part to that defense, a defense that was just as equally ravaged by injuries as their offense. Robert Saleh is the right guy for New York. On top of that, he's the polar opposite of an Adam Gase. They go from an offensive-minded coach to a defensive-minded coach. Reports are saying that Robert Saleh is likely to stick with Sam Darnold, which to me, good for Sam Darnold. He deserves it. The guy has been given a raw hand throughout his career. So Sam Darnold is definitely going to benefit from this hire no matter what. Again, this is another situation where it cannot possibly get worse for the Jets than it did this year. You lost the number one pick, but if you are sticking with Sam Darnold, Robert Saleh is going to have, and his GM, are going to have a lot of draft picks and draft capital to work with and can really build something special in New York. You can't take time to build this either. The Buffalo Bills look to be the powerhouse now of the AFC East. They will be along the top of the division for a long time. The Miami Dolphins, though they missed the playoffs this year, man, if Tua really develops in their system, I don't exactly, where there's smoke, there's fire. Yes, there was an anonymous player in Miami who said they're unsure of the skill set of Tua Tagovailoa, but trust me, you will see, especially if you're a fan of the Miami Dolphins, you will see Tua Tagovailoa will give you a chance to win every Sunday. And with the supporting cast around him, like the one that they have in Miami, you will see nothing but improvement from Tua. I expect him to improve greatly in the 2021 season. We'll see just how much that improvement is. But thus far, it has been a rough going for the New York Jets. But Robert Saleh can give that organization exactly what it needs and can bring in, hopefully, for Jets fans everywhere, a taste of a winning culture. There needs to be a better locker room culture in New York. Robert Saleh is the right guy to do that. But I think this very, very much hurts San Francisco. The 49ers are heavily reliant on that defense. And it really felt to me that Robert Saleh was a big reason for that. Robert Saleh's mind is what came up with these schemes, what made guys like Nick Bosa, guys like DeForest Buckner, all of these players who have come through San Francisco in the last 3 years on their defense, and he's elevated them to the best of their ability. They were a super physical team with an amazing pass rush, an amazing game against the run. And it's really, really going to be interesting to see what Robert Saleh can do in New York. But it's going to be really unfortunate if this results in... Now, mind you, this doesn't take... Taking Robert Saleh out of San Francisco does not take the talent away from his defense. But if it takes the culture away from that defense and there's a heavy change this year under a new defensive coordinator, it's going to be very hard for the San Francisco 49ers to compete in an already stacked NFC West. The Cardinals are only going to get better. As I said earlier in the podcast, the LA Rams aren't going anywhere. They're going to be around for a while. So, and the Seahawks... the Seahawks defense appears to be on decline, but whenever you have Russell Wilson as your quarterback, you have a chance to win. You always have a chance to win with Russell Wilson, in the same way that the Packers will always have a chance to win with Aaron Rodgers. But this feels like a very big blow to the San Francisco 49ers, especially on the defensive end of the ball. Robert Saleh, good for this guy. He's definitely earned the right to be a head coach in the NFL, and I think New York is a great fit for him. The Gang Green, who have always had a very good defensive reputation in recent years, not very well known for their quarterback play whatsoever. But now that you have a defensive-minded coach, the big question is, who is Robert Saleh going to hire as his offensive coordinator in New York? Is his offensive coordinator going to be able to get the most out of Sam Darnold? Despite the fact that we saw a huge regression in Sam Darnold this last season, can they turn him around? And can Sam Darnold finally use his talent to finally lift the Jets out of their now, which is great, by the way. Going off on a tangent here, it's safe to say that MetLife Stadium has become the new factory of sadness. The Browns have gotten their playoff victory. The factory of sadness, for now, is no more unless they decide to reamp operations next season. MetLife Stadium is now the factory of sadness for both Jets and Giants fans alike. Your teams stink. Hopefully, Joe Judge, he had a good thing going near the end of the season there. His offense was terrible. Hopefully Saquon coming back can fix that. But on the Jets side, man, there's a lot to like. There's a lot of draft capital coming their way, especially if they are trading that second overall pick. Because it's likely that they aren't going to go with Justin Fields now. They're going to stick with Sam Darnold. There are a lot of teams in this draft this year who are ready to trade for a quarterback. Two of them out of my team's own division, I could see Detroit or Minnesota both attempting to go after a guy like Justin Fields. Minnesota, a little bit less likely. Minnesota isn't very well known after the Herschel Walker trade to take huge risks on big-name players, especially a draft pick. But it's very clear that Kirk Cousins is not the answer in Minnesota. Mike Zimmer does not have faith in Kirk Cousins to win them playoff games. The Vikings need to make a move quick, and I could see them trading with New York. I could see plenty of teams trading a decent amount of capital with New York to obtain that number 2 overall pick and have Justin Fields most likely as their franchise quarterback. And that only spells better things for the Jets to come. So, good on the Jets for hiring Robert Saleh. I'm excited to see what Robert Saleh can do. It's going to be just great. I'd like to thank you guys for tuning in to today's podcast. All replays of our podcast are uploaded 48 hours after they air over on Twitch. You can check it out. It is on YouTube, youtube.com/1212podcast. You can follow us over on Twitter, twitter.com/1212podcast. You can also follow my personal Twitter, twitter.com/TigerXL. I will be back later in the week. We're going to talk about the other head coaching hires as well as previewing the championship weekend. Thank you for tuning in. And as always, stay beautiful.